Thank you and welcome, Professor. That's a beautiful picture there.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, go ahead.
Right. Right. Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I have been telling the issues of the Nile Basin for the last 50 years, 50. And I visited the Nile Basin countries, all of them, all 11 of them, several times, and in particular Sudan, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. And I think there is an awakening now. I spent 5 days in Juba as a guest of the president of the country upon his personal invitation to work on awareness about and do public consultations on issues relating to climate, to water, and in particular the SUDD and Jungule Canal. In our presentation today, I will take you through different scientific aspects and just a little bit of policy aspects and a minimal of politics aspects. And I always try to go for policies rather than politics. South Sudan is blessed. We are all, as Africans, we are actually blessed with the SUDD, the wetlands. South Sudan has quite a bit of rainfall, and it needs to be taken as a wealth, because if you take oil, when South Sudan separated, their share of oil was 350,000 barrels per day. Today, the production is 120,000 barrels, less than 50%. And oil is an unrenewable resource. Water is a renewable resource. Water does not go up into the thin air. It goes into the cycle and it comes back. The first question is, why do we have wetlands in this particular place? This is the profile of the passage of the Nile from from Kagera going down to SUDD in Egypt. And if you look at that, this is where the SUDD is. This is a natural depression in the profile of the Nile, and water seeks its own level, so that this dump has to be filled before the water can actually flow. This is the main reason for that.
If he can increase
you can make it presentation mode, you know, on that the bottom side, the icon.
Yeah. And if you look at this one, this is an aerial view. This is the occasional wetlands, and these are the permanent. These two are the permanent wetlands. If you look at this total profile of the Nile from Lake Tana and from Lake Victoria, just look at the contribution of South Sudan. Nobody mentions the input into the Nile of South Sudan. So Bat River, which is shared between the Barrow from Ethiopia and small rivers from South Sudan, delivers about 15 billion cubic meters of water. The Bahr al-Ghazal Basin, which is on the left-hand side, it delivers about 14.5 billion cubic meters of water. The total discharge at Aswan Dam is 84 billion cubic meters of water. Ethiopia alone, between Sobat and Company and the Blue Nile and Company, generates about 80 to 85% of the total discharge of the Nile waters. One of the blessings, if you look at this is the eastern floodplains. This is where the Sobat is, the Barrow is, the Pibor is. And these are the western floodplains. This is where Sio, Busari, Kir River, Naam River, and this is where the wetlands of the west, and these are the wetlands of the east. Of interest is this green belt. And the reason why it is called the green belt is that the northern winds take the evaporation from the SUDD and we have saturated clouds, and they fall as rain in the green belt. This is northern Uganda, and this is western Equatoria. We never hear of a famine in western Equatoria. We never hear of a drought in western Equatoria. And the reason is the evaporation from the play games with the Sudlands, and we might lose that. Even there is an influence of rainfall in the very western parts of Ethiopia, southern Ethiopia, SWNPR, from this evaporation. There are 11 countries of the Nile Basin, and I had got Burundi was the favor once my water has got to pay for it. An African, I am very proud of them. And then we have Eritrea, and Eritrea is no longer an active member of the Nile Basin Initiative. They are an observer status, and Eritrea generates less than 1% of the total discharge of the Nile waters through the Gash River and small rivers in the eastern parts of the continent. The SUDD has a catchment of about estimated at 30,000 square kilometers to 70,000 square kilometers, depending on the estimates and the season. 14,000 square kilometers of that is seasonal with peak discharge around August. 16,000 square kilometers is permanently flooded with water from Lake Victoria and other sources. The estimated quantity of water in the SUDD is 30 billion cubic meters of water, and that is 1/3 of the total discharge at the high dam. And then comes the question, and especially for those who are trying to siphon out water from the SUDD, who really owns the SUDD water? The 1929 agreement was silent about the wetlands. And the Jungule Canal was developed around 1904. I will come to that later on. The 1959 agreement talks about sharing any additional discharge from projects or natural rises in Lake Victoria 50-50 between and Egypt, as if there are no countries, there are no human beings, there is no life, there are no rights south of the high dam. The CPA, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement between the central government in Khartoum and the SPLM, SPLA, the freedom fighters in South Sudan, was signed in 2005. I was very close to the file and played several roles here and there. It is silent about stagnant waters, be it rights or no rights. It did not talk about it. When I asked Dr. John Garang, why is that? He said, we don't want to agitate the Egyptians. And he's a very intelligent man. He's a shrewd leader. Probably he was right at that time. By default, the stagnant SUDD waters belong to the peoples of South Sudan, and a small part of it to other African countries neighboring them. This is a rare map. This is the geological map of Sudan before separation in 2011. It was produced through several grants, but there was a French company who actually did the job. It took quite a bit of a while, 5 or 6 years, and they produced a very credible information. These areas are what we call Mrawaba series. Now I am taking you from the surface water to the underground water. If you want to drill a borehole, not a deep bore, not a borehole, not something on the surface, and I'm talking about 30, 35, 40 meters deep until you get to the aquifer, wherever you are in Sudan, you need to drill in Mrawaba series. It's called Mrawaba series. If you drill elsewhere, you are not going to get the quantity of water that you will get from Wababa series. This large depot of underground water is partly and greatly supplemented by the seeping water from the SUDD. So we play games with the SUDD, we play games with other ecosystems. I would like to take you to the eastern swamps, the eastern part of the wetlands, and that's Bahr al-Ghazal Basin. It is made of Siyo River, Busari River, and they join just south of Wow to form the Jur. And then we have the Lul, Toin, Ragab al-Zarga, we have Pongo, Geti, Get, we have Woko, we have Bahr al-Naam, just before Lake No, and we have River Kir or Bahr al-Arab. All that is 100% generated in South Sudan. Nobody can have claim. It has got nothing to do with Lake Victoria or Lake Tana or any other lake. So that makes South Sudan not only a passage country, but a source country as well. As we said, the estimated area of about 16,000 square kilometers, and the Sobat River and the Bahr al-Ghazal Basin, each of them generates about 15 billion cubic meters. The history of the Ungule Canal dates back to the early days of the Anglo-Egyptian colonial administration in Sudan, which was established in 1898 after the conquest of the Mahdi's. And it was started by an English engineer who was at the helm of the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation in Egypt. He came there in 1904, and we will talk about that later. Just look at that. These are the rivers within South Sudan, and this is the SUDD. Plenty of water, and unimaginable, a very big wealth of water if well preserved and well managed. To add insult to injury, there was a town just south of Malakal in South Sudan that was called Tawfiqiya. And Tawfiq Pasha was the ruler of Egypt and Sudan. He is the son of Ismail Pasha, the son of Ibrahim Pasha, the son of Muhammad Ali Pasha, who invaded Sudan in 1821 to get gold and slaves and to hunt slaves. In 1904, this Englishman, he came and surveyed the wetlands, and he estimated that estimated correctly, that the total water there was about the 30 billion cubic meters. And then he came with the devilish idea that, you know, we can drain about 4.8 billion cubic meters out of that water into the main Nile for the benefit of Egypt. So the concept of Jungule Canal was a colonial project in 1904. It remains a colonial project today.
Yeah.
I trace this, what I call adding harm to injury. The Sinnar Dam was completed in 1925, completed and ready to open into the canals. Egypt refused to agree to the usage of the water needed until finally they only released 4 billion cubic meters of water for Sudan. That's all you can take. And that was in 1929 upon the exchange of notes between Egypt and the United Kingdom. And it says in regard to the use of water of the River Nile for irrigation purposes, and it was approved in Cairo, May 7th, 1929. So in 1929, until 1929, Egypt assumed total ownership of the entire discharge of the Nile. And then, you know, let us give these Black Africans down south a little bit of water for the Sinnar Dam. And the 1959 agreement is an insulting show of arrogance. And I salute Emperor Haile Selassie because he stood very steadfastly against disagreement. However, he did not have the muscle of Egypt or the muscle of the United Kingdom or other colonial forces. The Republic of Sudan, in agreement with the Arab Republic, shall construct projects for the increase of the river yield by preventing losses of water of the Nile Basin in the swamps. Just like that. They just assume that they can do what they want with the swamps. The net yield project shall be divided equally between, and the other 9 countries can go and eat coal. The yield will be 84 billion cubic meters. And if the losses are estimated at 10 billion yards or cubic meters, by adding these shares to the acquired rights, shall be 18.5 billion cubic meters for the Republic of Sudan and 55.5 billion cubic meters for the United Arab Republic. Just like that. The entire discharge was divided just between the 2 countries. Now, what was the result of that on Sudan? 27 Nubian villages were submerged until today. Anything north of Sai Island has been submerged. The UNESCO estimated that this area that was submerged was probably the richest area on Earth for unexcavated archaeology. And the Nubian cultures, the Nubian history, and the Nubian archaeology and the Nubian civilizations in Kerma are now emerging, and honest people are exposing the mighty history of the Nubians. Over 50,000 Nubians were forcibly relocated to alien and totally strange land to them. And then, I always use this term, adding insult to injury. The same agreement says, but if the average yield increases for whatever reason, the resulting net benefit from this increase shall be divided between the 2 republics in equal shares. So whatever happens in Lake Tana or Lake Victoria, and there is more discharge, I mean, all the other 9 countries, they don't have rights. I would like to just linger a little bit on Jonglei Canal, because right now in South Sudan, Jonglei Canal and the Nile waters don't seem to be separable. And there is a wrong misconception that if Jonglei Canal is revived and the water is drained, then there will be no floods. And this is, of course, total ignorance, total ignorant politicians who assume that they know it all. They are not waiting and they're not inviting experts to tell them that there is no connection whatsoever between digging a canal and floods. The floods are through climate change. The canal is for making use of the water in one way or the other, including draining it. But in 1904, Sir William Gastrin, who was the Undersecretary of State for Public Works in Egypt, he's the one who came up with this idea. The first version was to dig 240 kilometers and bypass the marshes. He went back in 1907 and he developed on that. And in those days, Egypt was a colony of Great Britain. And in fact, if we go back to history, Egypt ceased to exist as an independent nation since 342 BC, the invasion of Alexander the Great. Since that day, 342 or 324 BC, Egypt did not sleep a single night as an independent country until 1936 AD, the agreement that was signed and made the exit of the British. Egypt and Sudan Joint Technical Committee, it was really dominated by Egypt all the time, was established in 1969 as an advanced step towards implementation of the canal. It was not really about the shared waters between Sudan and Egypt. The elephant in the room for that was the Jonglei Canal. The commission concluded a detailed study and was presented to the governments of Egypt and Sudan in 1971. And then negotiations started. And around 1974, final approval was given. And the dredging started with a huge machine, the Rupel. It was brought from Pakistan under a joint French-Italian joint venture called Compagnie Construction d'International. It was a joint company between France and Italy, and they got the contract to do the drilling. It was claimed that then later on, those additional studies extended the length of the canal to 360 kilometers instead of 280 kilometers. And the reason, to get more water into the canal. Digging the Jonglei Canal was expected to save great amounts of water, cultivate lands, and lead to development, a pack of lies that was cheap political propaganda and not scientific evidence about the Jonglei Canal. It hasn't got a single drop of benefits for the people of South Sudan. And this is the whole thing. These are the wetlands. This was the first passage of the canal, and this is the second passage of the canal. And then it comes down here. There is nothing there, even in all the writings, there is no development, there is no benefit, there is no kickback for the Shilluk, the Nuer, and the Dinkas who live around those areas. As we said earlier, those are the statistics of the SUDD wetlands. And we have got to remember that the SUDD is a Ramsar designate as wetlands. So there is an element of international law involved in how we deal with it. And it is now under review as UNESCO World Heritage. It has not been approved yet. It is in process. That, of course, will add to the fact that there is another element of international law. The Sobat, which is made up of Baro and Pibor. Baro comes from the southern Ethiopian highlands, and the Pibor generates in South Sudan. Up to 3 billion cubic meters of water can be dammed for irrigation. There is no way to put a dam inside South Sudan. It is all soft soil. But if the current closeness, if the current sensible negotiations between South Sudan and Ethiopia, if those are promoted, if those are operationalized, and if a dam is set up in the highlands at the origin of the Baro, that water can be saved for irrigation, and it can irrigate the Jonglei Plains and be the granary for South Sudan. They can cultivate half the size of the Jazeera scheme in the north. And as a total, not just for irrigation, up to 12 billion cubic meters of water can be dammed. Bank did a pre-feasibility on that, more of a reconnaissance. And I think that anyone messing with these basins, I would doubt really his Africanism and his nationalism. Bahr al-Jabal can generate between 240 to 2705 megawatts of hydro at Fula Rapids around Nimuli. And there is a study there that was made by the Germans and others that can prove water can be used without tampering with the discharge. Just like the GERD. I mean, the GERD is not taking water, not one drop. The GERD is using the height. The difference between hydrology and hydraulics. Hydrology is the Q, is the discharge. Hydraulics is the energy in the water. So in the GERD, we are only using the head and we are using the hydraulics rather than the hydrology. And Ethiopia keeps saying that time again and time again and time again, but the Egyptians have a phobia about anyone who even touches the Nile and its shores. One of the raison d'etre, the rationale for reviving the Jonglei Canal and draining the SUDD was it will end the floods. The embassy of the Netherlands made a survey and found that and it is in their website. Anybody who goes to the website of the embassy of the Netherlands in South Sudan, great, I have a lot of admiration for these people. He will find that they discovered that there were obstructions in the passage of water trying to get to the river. So part of the flooding is kind of man-made. And there are photographs taken by UNMIS of an obstruction in Bahr Naam, where the oil companies who are wreaking havoc in South Sudan made a barrier. They said it is a bridge. It was not a bridge. It was a barrier on River Naam. They just dumped the river and they had a very small culvert that does not take even 5% of the discharge of Bahr Naam. So the water overflowed the banks and drowned Bentiu. And as we all know that you do not deal with floods by building canals to drain your water. We build dikes, we do climate adaptation, we do relocation. The approach towards dealing with floods is completely different from the approach for draining your own water and giving it to somebody else downstream. There is a number of Nile agreements. I think there are 9 of them. And people underestimate the value of these agreements. Yes, most of them are colonial agreements. But I want to take you to 2 incidents. The first one is Badme between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Quite a bit of the ruling of the International Tribunal for Arbitration in The Hague were based on colonial history, colonial maps, colonial agreements. And the second example is the Bakassi Peninsula between Cameroon and Nigeria. Again, there was a ruling by the International Court of Justice. It has not been implemented until today. As we speak, Nigeria is draining oil from the Bakassi Peninsula, which is owned by Cameroon, and they refuse to give it back. Even after Kofi Annan signed the second agreement to enforce the ruling of the International Court of Justice. So we really need to be aware of all those agreements, what was in them, who signed them, what is the impact of those agreements on us today, if any. What if there are disputes? But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think there are 9 of them, up to 1929, up to 1933, those were colonial agreements. The 1959 is post-colonial. People think of the GERD as if it is a project of today. It is not. And really, Ethiopia fought tooth and nail to preserve their rights with forces and countries that were not their size. Between 1925 and 1935, Ethiopia tried its best to stand in the face of colonial powers, the UK, Italy, and Egypt. 1926, Ethiopia addressed the League of Nations. That was before the formation of the United Nations, protesting the UK, Italy hegemony of the Nile. Italy giving full rights to the UK in Lake Tana, just like that. The agreement is there. 1927, and that is the first thinking that I am aware of a dam in Lake Tana. President Coolidge supported the funding of an Ethiopian dam on Tana, a small one. And a company by the name of G.J. White Engineering Corps was commissioned to do the studies, and they came up with a costing of about $10 to $15 million. Between 1930 and 1934, they did the designs and they were ready to embark on it when Ethiopia was taken over in 1936 by the Italians for a short period. I think the end of the occupation was 1943, just before the end of the Second World War. One of the very good references that I wish to bring to the attention of our colleagues is a book by Ato Tazde-Gefo, and titled The Nile, Historical, Legal, and Developmental Perspectives. Very accurate account, very detailed account of that historical time. What does South Sudan need to do? Because we cannot go to the SUDD without going through and with South Sudan, although it is in our interest as Africans. I would study what I call the legal dimension. I will study all the agreements, colonial and non-colonial. I will study all the basin of African agreement. There are 27, maybe there are more. This is what I have. There are 27 protocols. The Nile, which is the longest river on earth, as we speak now, hasn't got a cooperative framework agreement in place to manage the relationship between the 11 countries of the Nile. Does not exist. We have got to be aware of the likelihood of effect and influence of these colonial agreements, and be mindful of the Badme case and the Bakassi Peninsula and other cases. They need to do research, starting with the Helsinki rules that started this whole thing, and embark on serious capacity building. The capacity of the ministries that are in charge of the SUDD and the waters, they lack institutional capacity. They need to build scenarios, and they need to get ready just in case the going gets tough, and just in case Egypt and Sudan insist on draining water out of the SUDD. And now I want to go back and wear my mechanical engineering hat, which is my basic qualification in 1964. If there is a will, and if I were South Sudan, I will get a massive team of Caterpillar equipment, D10s, D11s, motor graders, excavators, track excavators, and I will backfill the 260 kilometers of the Gujungune Canal that have been dug, and I will wipe it out of the surface of Earth. That's the proper remedy, so that nobody talks about Gujungune Canal from then on, and that no corrupt politicians or technicians come into the picture. This is the machine that dug the canal. It is called the Rupel, and it was imported from Pakistan. It was digging the canal in Pakistan. When it did the job, it was brought to South Sudan. And then in very early 1984, John Garang ordered the rebelling soldiers from Battalion 104 and 105 of the Sudanese army to disable the machine. And they did. They dynamited the machine and they captured 5 French and Italian technicians. Took them to Ethiopia. Mariam was supporting and got used to release what we call the Khawajas, unless the entire fleet of Caterpillar machinery is turned over to him. Very gallant man. I have a lot of respect for him. And they did. I was one of the mediators who concluded the deal. And they got, I think there were 50 pieces of cat that were turned over to the SPLA. The D8s and D9s were used as tanks. They put plates, thick 1-inch plates, and they used them as tanks. The D7s and D6s and motor graders were used to open the roads. In this website, this is the SUDD, which is SUDD and Water Action Team. This is a website where you, if you want to take a screenshot, where you will find quite a bit of information, quite a bit of agreements and documents. It's a very rich website. And if anyone wants the full presentation or wants any additional information, that's my email for this kind of venture. And I thank you very much for listening. And if you have got any questions, I will appreciate it if you put them in writing so that Atabati can actually select those that are relevant to us. And I am willing to answer all your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. It's a very educational, informative session that you have. You know, this is a different angle or a different even topic that we discussed so far. So it's very comparatively very new, at least to me, and very important. I know the importance of the SUDD and the Jonglei Canal, the impacts and all, but I didn't know about so many things associated with it, and also the agreements that you narrated and told us. That's a big a new thing for me. And collaboration again and again for the common good, not for the politicians, but for the common people is what we are emphasizing. And thank you very much for your excellent presentation. And I open it now for questions and comments if there is any. What we do, Professor, is we allow the participants to pose their questions to verbally, but if anybody wants it in writing, please send me through the chat, because we are we can manage, I think, within this remaining time. Is that okay with you, Professor?
Yeah, okay. Perfect.
Okay, so please raise your hands so that I can give you the chance to speak, to pose your, to bring up your questions, any comments if you have any. Anybody? So let me stop the sharing and yeah. So you can stop the sharing, Professor, so that I can see all the people.
Yeah, I am trying to do that.
No problem.
Stop share. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's there. So you can see them also. This is
sure.
Very nice people here. I think so. Okay. Anybody who wants to have anybody with question? By the way, I wanted to acknowledge Mr. Manut Abiruel. Is that right? Welcome. Please tell us about yourself. Manut, you are muted.
You are muted, Manut. You are muted. You are muted.
Yeah. Please unmute yourself and speak. Speak up.
We cannot hear you.
Okay. Yeah, we cannot hear you. We cannot hear you. Unmute yourself. I don't know. I cannot do it. I only can ask to unmute. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Till Manut comes on, and anybody, I want to acknowledge Marishat also here, and thank you, and Alam. Any other person that I didn't? Daniel Getachew is also here, and Yilma. Can you tell us who you are? Hello, Yilma. Okay, I have a question then, Professor. Huh? Oh, yes, Yilma, please go ahead.
Yeah, I am Yilma Salashi. I'm a water resource engineer, one of the negotiator on GARD from Ethiopia.
Thank you, Mr. Yilma, Ato Yilma, for coming, and I appreciate your presence here. Dr. Aklog, I think you have raised your hand.
I just want to commend Professor for really enlightening. Most of us do not really have a deep appreciation of the canal and the implications of the canal. My question to Professor is, I think have been really successful in segregating Africans, in separating us, not to look at the whole picture, because the GERD issue is a geopolitical, strategic, and security issue. And it affects not only Ethiopia, it affects all other riparian sub-Saharan African countries that have never been given a chance to participate in the policy-making process. So I just wonder how we can bridge that gap among African states. We are doing, I think Dr. Abate is doing his level best to bring us together to understand the whole picture. But I just wonder whether there isn't more African states can do to bridge the knowledge gap across the board with regard to the future of water and the Nile. I just wonder if you can comment on how we can do that.
Thank you very much. By President in South Sudan for 5 days public consultations, that I made an appeal to him, a direct appeal, 1 page, and I sent it to him, and it was a bullet in the dark. I didn't think that the president of the country is going to read my appeal. He did. He read the appeal and he forwarded it to the letter, and he funded 5 days of public consultations that have actually turned the tables on the ignorance that was prevailing there. I must have received 15 to 20,000 messages in my phone and email, either asking questions or saying thank you. And now there is quite a bit of awareness that the status quo is not an option. Having Egypt all over the place and this fragmentation. Some years back, I started talking about interdependencies, just to answer your question, Doctor. And unless we identify interdependencies, what does Uganda want from me, Ethiopia? Do they want 300 megawatt? Fine. Well, we'll give you 300 megawatts at this price. Now, what do I want from Uganda? There has got to be, I give you what I have and you need, and you give me what you have and I need. So the issue of dependency needs for is the Nile Basin Initiative. The Nile Basin Initiative, the father and mother of the Nile Basin Initiative is Canada. People don't know that, and Canadians are not in the habit of, raising their flag for whatever they do. And it started in 1992, not at the time of the formation. And it was built on one principle, rights and benefits. That's the whole thing. The overriding principle of the Nile Basin Initiative is rights and benefits. Ethiopia has 95, 94, 95, 96% rights of the entire discharge of the Nile. Well, if you want more water from me, what are you going to give me? In South Sudan, the Egyptians are building clinics. They are they are digging boreholes. I mean, peanuts. You cannot take 4.5 billion cubic meters of water and give me you have my water for forever. So a very big area really is to activate, vitalize, and inject fresh blood into the Nile Basin Initiative. Go back to the Cooperative Framework Agreement. Go back to Article 14B, which is the only missing link. If we use 14B, Egypt and Sudan, there is no water for anyone else. If we use 14B, our African version, there is water for everyone. I think this is a first step that we have got to create more awareness. The Egyptians have been working around the clock to kill the Nile Basin Initiative and to kill the CFA. Right now, we have 6 countries that have signed on. We have 4 countries that have ratified. If we get 2 more countries to ratify, the agreement enters into force and the Egyptians can eat coal. There is nothing they can do about it. It will be sent to the African Union and it can turn into an agreement regulating the Nile Basin if Sudan and Egypt like it or not. So I think those are 2 things that can be done. And I must give a lot of credit to the government of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. They have not abandoned the people in South Sudan. They have a desk on water issues. They are doing great work over there. They're working to do more. They are one of the few who picked up my message on institutional capacity building of the ministries. The ministries are holy shells. Really, you have an undersecretary, you have a minister. And I asked the undersecretary of the Ministry of Water, and I said, what is your total force? And he said 200. And of course, I wouldn't take just that's not a full answer. And I said, how many report to work? And he said half of them. What about the other half? And he said they are either not paid or they don't have enough money to come to office. So with that kind of capacity that is in great limbo, it is very difficult to manage such sensitive files. And I think those 2 things, I think we need to revisit interdependencies and see what brings us together as African countries, Ethiopia included. And we have got to go to the framework, the legal framework, and start from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. And I see Dr. Alam raised his hand, but before that, can I give to Manut Alam, if you don't mind, to speak because he is now unmuted. Okay, Manut, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Abid. I'm from South Sudan, from an organization called SUDD. For us in South Sudan, we are really divided because some people start with dredging because they see it is a solution for flooding. And for us, if we got the solution for flooding, our people will stand in one trade so that to stop the dredging, because we see dredging is the solution for flooding. But if we got another solution for that to stop what is, are you getting me?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so youth are divided. Some youth are with dredging because the flooding is over all South Sudan. And if we got the solution for that, the youth will stand with some youth which are calling not for dredging. Because now I'm one of people that don't want dredging. As Mr. Professor talked before, there are so many problems in the future which can face us. And as a youth, we don't want to face that challenges because we are the one who will leave that situation. And our politicians now, they want it because their time is already finished, and they don't know what can happen for us in the future. So for us, we are calling for international community to support our people we are affected by flooding. And thank you.
Thank you, Manut, and welcome again. Please send me your email address. By the way, I sent you through a chat, and I will communicate to Dr. Aklog also as per his request.
Okay, not forgetting, I'm activist from organization called SUDD Water Action Team.
Good, very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will be communicating to Professor Elkhazin also to explain to you even in detail after the meeting as well. If you don't have his email address,
I have his email address.
Yeah, please continue. This forum is one of the objectives is to create, networking and talking with each other. So you will get lots of answers from Professor Elkhazin. He is very knowledgeable. I can see that very, very clearly. And regarding the flooding that you said that the Sudanese youth especially is divided with the pro digging of the canal or not digging the canals, that you will be explained very, very adequately by Professor. And if you see, the website that he has given, and Professor Elkhazin, you want to add on it to address?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Manu.
Thank you. I'm very blessed to be in front of the old man.
Thank you.
Thank you. The experts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Just a quick response of Brother Abati, just a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Manut, for attending and for coming out. I made a second appeal to the president that he has accepted. No one is with or against dredging. No one is against clearing the aquatic weeds for navigation. That's not a problem. Dredging is when you go down and you dredge the bottom of the river to drain more water. That's the question mark. Even that, nobody's against it. All we are saying, let us do that after we have credible feasibility studies. The president has accepted that, has accepted my appeal. He commissioned Dr. Barnaba Marial to have a contract to do that so that we can start doing things after we do the credible evidence-based feasibility studies. So as youth, I would advise you not to take a position that is not informed, not to take a position that is not based on science and based on feasibility studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. And I want to acknowledge quickly Dr. Ahmed Adam, one of the presenters in the past also. And thank you for coming in, Dr. Ahmed.
Yes.
Yeah. So Alam, can you go ahead with your question? Dr. Alam Gabriel.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to comment, actually. Thank you very much for the really very informative presentations. There are new things, specific to South Sudan, which we're lacking really very detailed information because there is information gap in terms of that region, and really appreciate expanding our knowledge gap. you brought a very interesting issue at the end, just filling the Jonglei Canal so that it really does not exist from the map at all. That's really a very interesting proposition. I just wonder, it's 240 kilometers long. Where does the dirt that was dug when is it piled up? I mean, close by, or I was just curious on that one. If you know, if you enlighten us and comment on that one, that would be helpful to me. And I just want to also thank Dr. Irma. He didn't introduce himself in length, but he's a very top-notch hydrologist and teacher in Addis Ababa University. Thank you for coming and attending this this forum. Please join us. Hopefully in the future you make also a presentation. Please, Dr. Abata, take a note of him. If one of the experts in the Ethiopian hydrology and hydraulics and negotiation with the GERD team. So I just want to mention that one to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alam. That's very good, to know Dr. Ilma also here, and I appreciate that he contacted me through my email as well, and I'm just sending a chat message for you, Dr. Ilma, as well. And is there anyone who has a question, including Dr. Ilma? Anybody? Okay, Dr. Ahmed. Go ahead, sir.
Can we answer the previous question?
Yes. I forgot. Here.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an important question, because I always call Jonglei Canal the elephant in the room. It is the biggest thing that we really need to deal with. And the projected length of the canal that was finalized was 360 kilometers. Now about 260 kilometers have been dug. I have been to some places where the depths of the digging was 8 meters. In certain areas, the slope that was generated was 1 to 10. 1 to 10. I mean, you cannot keep people upstream, keep water upstream when you have got a slope of 1 to 10. The water is going to flow north, and quite a bit of it was damaged. The size were damaged because the cattle, there were no crossing points. So the cattle would come down, a lot of it will die. They will come down and they want to go up on the other side. So instead of almost a straight V, it has become a very flat V in certain places. It has ruptured its banks in the northern end, and water was and is still flowing out into the Nile. And it has ruptured its banks in 2 other areas before the end that I am aware of. I don't know if there are others. So to answer your question, what if I am the president of South Sudan, and if I want to backfill it, I will backfill the entire 260 kilometers that have been dug before. And as I said, the danger is the slope that was created by dredging up down to 8 meters. There may be more. Certain areas, it depends on the topography. But I stood somewhere and I measured between the land and between the bottom of the canal, and the machine dug 8 meters deep.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Professor. And let's keep on going to Dr. Ahmed there.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Prof. Elkhazin. He gave a very, very knowledgeable, very elaborative presentation of the problem. Actually, this, this issue, what we call it, it is for Jonglei Canal. Some people are talking about safe air, about but I believe now we have to concentrate on the Jonglei Canal. What are the benefits and what are the bad things? I mean, what to call it? He mentioned something which is very strange for me. He just recommended to the to the president of the South Sudan to close it. I think he has also another recommendation to have more studies for the social environmental issues to see if there are benefits, because now we're talking about 30,000 kilometers are being flooded, and this land is when it's flooded, nobody's using it. So Sudan is not using it. If you drain it, then you can use that part of that area. So these are the benefits. I know that there are impacts, environmental impact. We have to take care of it, and that's very clear for me. I hope the professor is also can recommend to have more studies, not to close it, to bring the dozers and to close the 260 kilometers. And because Sudan at that time is responsible from South Sudan, and in fact, even in the Sudanese, they are not happy about digging the canals at that time, because it cost Sudan $50 million. The cost of the 260 kilometer, it cost $100 million. Sudan paid 50 and Egypt paid 50. And we didn't get any benefits. In fact, even nobody was interested to start that, because we don't need the water at that time until today. And I tell you, last year and this year, more water is coming from Equatorial. The White Nile is now bringing this year and last year double the average. So all this water is going to flood a lot of area in South Sudan. So in order to have more studies, to drain the water, to use the land, and for the human being and for the livestock, it is good. What's wrong about that? That's my point. There is one person mentioned something about sharing the benefits of the water. Ethiopia is bringing 68% of the water to the Nile. So it's not matter of how much you get from one country. It is a matter of this is a shared water, and it is not for sale. It's very important. Shared water, according to international law, is not for sale. It is for use. Everyone has a right to use it, whether Ethiopia or another country. And this is not, it is in Helsinki rules, it was mentioned also, and in the UN convention also used, that any country sharing, we can call it in a river shared by countries, they can use it without making cost to the others. That is my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Professor?
Right, on the two, on the, let me take the second point first. The share of Sudan from the 1959 agreement was 18.5 billion cubic meters of water. Sudan never used more than 12 billion cubic meters of water. 6.5 billion cubic meters of water from Sudan's share were running free of charge to Egypt since 1964, when the dam became operational. So Sudan does not really need water. This is why you find Sudan half-hearted about this whole thing, because there is no, it's not Egypt. In Egypt, 92% to 93% of the needs of water are based on the Nile. The desalination plant they have started are drying out now. Africa Confidential has just produced an article on that. So I always really wonder what is the vested interest of Sudan in Jonglei Canal when they have excess amount of water. And we all felt happy when the Gerd lake, when the reservoir was lifted to 74 billion cubic meters, because then there could be an agreement between Ethiopia and Sudan to probably park those 6.5 billion cubic meters excess. And this is one of the fears of Egypt. But again, that is a personal opinion, and I think that Sudan probably needs to reevaluate what is their strategy and what is their policy regarding an increase of the discharge. On the first question, nobody with any common sense will object to studies, and I fully agree with you that there have got to be studies. We are aware of that. This group of people in SWAT and others, and our recommendations, our comprehensive recommendations to the president after 5 days of deliberations was, let us start but credible evidence-based feasibility studies by independent and credible organizations. And I listed 8 areas, not only social and economic. There are 9 areas where the feasibility study, a credible feasibility study, needs to cover. And as the president accepted my first appeal, I said, well, let me try my luck again. So I sent him another petition, exactly what you said. And I said, Mr. President, let us not dredge, let us not drain, let us not clear, let us not touch the status quo unless we do studies. And I nominated a very credible man, Brother Africano, who is the Undersecretary of the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. And the president agreed in writing. And he already commissioned one of the ministers to work with me so that we do that kind of study. So without reservation, I wholeheartedly agree with you that whatever is to be done with water, because it's a science, you cannot deal with science through politics. And I always differentiate between policies and politics. So I fully agree with you that we are on the same page, that whatever Jungule Canal, dredging, draining Bahr al-Ghazal Basin, whatever it is, needs to be subjected to credible, evidence-based feasibility studies before we embark on it. Thank you very much for the comment.
Thank you, Professor, again, and I hope Dr. Ahmed, the question is answered. And regarding, all these studies, science-based, repeatedly I heard Professor Elkhazin say about science-based, which we in this forum also agree, and that's one of our leading beliefs, that it should be on science and data and not politics. And regarding this emphasis on science and data, the NBI should be playing a very great role there. It's the Nile Basin Initiative and the CFA, the Cooperative Framework Agreement. That's the mechanism. That is the way that the 11 countries can come together and work out regarding the sharing, fair sharing, like Dr. Abdullah said. Not that Ethiopia is contributing 80% and saying, oh, 80% belongs to me, but the emphasis here is shared water. What in the CFA says equitable and reasonable as well, without harming others. And I wrote an article recently, and I think I shared it to all of you, most probably to this forum. It's published on the Nile Journal online. I quoted Dr. Abdullah because he presented on the CFA. He really did excellent presentation there. He said that 1959 agreement was done because there was no other country other than Egypt and Sudan using the Nile, so it can be modified. It can be, is that right? That's what I have there. And also Dr. I forgot the name, but he said that it's not only the downstream countries which can be negatively affected, but the upstream countries also can be negatively affected as well. So studies based on data is very important. And how do countries come together? How do the professionals come together? The professionals come together through some mechanisms. And I believe the CFA is the best, and also the NBI as well. And I don't know why Egypt is against it. in many forms. I see that opposition quite a lot. So this forum is really to bring in anybody to discuss. I brought Egyptian professionals here talking. And if you have any person from Egypt, for example, or any other of the Nile countries, Nile Basin countries, or outside also, it doesn't matter. We wanted to have knowledge. We wanted to have the science to be broadcast here, to be discussed here. So help me in bringing in people from any place, any thinking or a line of thoughts you might have, because we wanted to have it a free discussion here. And I appreciate your coming here. Dr. Yilma, I think I see your hand raised, so I will give you the chance to say something there.
All right, thank you. I really appreciate the presentation by Professor Elkhart. I may make some comment on the hydrology and the future study Professor indicated. When we try to somehow manage the SUDD swamp, it implies that during rainy periods of June, September, for example, many flood comes to the swamp areas. Now, if that floods passes through a canal, they will join down in White Nile and goes to the Khartoum. It is not clear if the White Nile River up to Khartoum, even the Nile River in Khartoum, can handle this excessive flood. So to use maybe water lost through excessive evaporation during a very wet period, wet years, we need to bring together highland dams in Ethiopia. GERD now can assist to some extent. And in Baro River, as Professor indicated, there are major dams which have been well studied. In Tams, they call it Tams Dam, more than 1,000 megawatt hydropower. Irrigation for Ethiopia and South Sudan there is a possibility. So additional dams has to be built so that when you use excess water from equatorial lakes and Bahar al-Jabal and other coming into South Sudan during extremely wet years, those dams will hold water in Ethiopian highlands so that Khartoum will be safe. So it is not only the study around Jonglei Canal solves the problem. So might be in the future, I hope we're going to that direction. If there is somehow saving of water, it will come from water stored in Ethiopian highlands, maybe excessive water lost from SUDD swamps, and the lowering of Hayas One Dam. And perhaps there is also a lot of talk, Jebel Aloya Dam, decommissioning of Jebel Aloya Dam. It is evaporative element. So this is one hydrological comment. The second, in this water use, the idea of water use, it's not for sale. That is correct. You can say at this point, until you have a share of water, like Sudan and Egypt, once they have a share of water, they can sell. Sudan can sell to Egypt from its share. It's possible. But water use, what in our negotiation, the critical element is upstream countries' water use for irrigation. That's what they object. So irrigation is also water use, abstraction use. For hydropower, It's okay with Egypt and Sudan, we know that. But upstream countries, in particular Ethiopia, needs water for irrigation, for drinking, for industrial purpose. There's a lot of obstruction is going to come in future. So we want to use that water. So I agree in his point, water use is allowed, okay. But even for hydropower use, you see, there is a lot of struggle. So in the future, I think all will come into one point. We may save water, as I mentioned earlier, if we cooperate and work together. It is not a grim reality, we'll have in future, but there is a very good chance we can have from 20 to 30 billion meter cube per year saving in a very wet year. In dry year, an average year, in my view, and unless you drain the swamp itself, you may not have water to let it go downstream. So saving from SUDD might be from a wet year scenario. Just to reflect on this discussion. Thank you, Dr. Abata, for inviting me.
Thank you. Welcome. Welcome for thank you for coming here. And Professor,
can I respond to? I mean, you raised very
please.
interesting points.
Yeah,
sure. The Egyptians actually have a phobia when it comes to water. I mean, if anybody who touches even if you want to have a cup and drink, the Egyptians have a phobia about anybody touching the Nile waters. They also have a nostalgia about water. I mean, they claim some kind of ownership since the days of Herodotus, when he said Egypt is the gift of the Nile, and Herodotus was correct 3,000 years back or 2,000 years back. And we have to do as upstream countries, we have to deal with that phobia and with that nostalgia. There are 105 million people. They cannot be ignored and they cannot be allowed to go thirsty. I want to draw attention to the annual report of the Nile Basin Initiative. As we speak now, the 2021 report has not been issued. I would direct you to the 2020 report. You will find it in the website. There isn't a single word, let alone a single letter about the CFA. And quite a bit of diplomatic pressure has been applied to quash and to clip the limbs of the Nile Basin Initiative. It needs to be revived. And I am banking on Ethiopia, really. And I stood on the battlegrounds of Adwa probably 10 times in my life. Sometimes I go there and I just wander around between the hills. And I remember 1896 when Emperor Menelik II and his wife managed to defeat the Italians. 12,000 of them, 6 or 7 were killed and the rest were captured. It was the first time in history that an African nation was able to defeat an invading force. And they're doing it again. I mean, the way Egypt stopped funding for this dam, even through African institutions. And at the end of the day, the dam is no longer of Abiy Ahmed or Meles Zenawi. The dam now belongs to the people of South Sudan because of the bonds. They paid for it. And I really hats off on a big bow for this decision and for the way this was managed. And we need such bold decisions so that at least we don't want to take everything from everybody. What we want is our right share. We don't want to be sidelines. We don't want to be told that you are the source country and you cannot take a drop of water. That's not going to happen. And the new generations of Manut are not going to allow that. I would also direct you to follow the Africa Intelligence. This is a daily African magazine. It is very well written. They're very scientific. Of late, I think during the last couple of months, they have 3 articles. If you don't find them, let me know. This is journalistic reporting, but it is important for us because the journals go to the hands of people, and all of us were looking after awareness. So we also want to actually watch with great gratitude to Africa Intelligence Daily, which is, I am not sure if there is another African daily, but I have the specific 3 articles that I am referring to. And if you want them, let me know. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Professor. Very informative here. And yes, I will look into it, and I hope the rest of us also. And I appreciate Dr. Ilma here bringing in that the Jonglei Canal and the water, excess water going out might affect, Khartoum's side also, which is not prepared to take more water, and even the banks of the river also. That's a good insight there. I appreciate. And I will finish it with one question here, which I heard or read, I don't remember, about the evaporation from the SUDD is contributing to the rainfall in Ethiopia and even in Sudan also, and as well. So if you dry it, it means there will not be water evaporating from there, and the rainfall will be less. What do you think about this saying, Professor? And then I will, okay, mine will not be the last, but Dr. Osman, you want to answer both of us together, or you want to answer my question first, Professor?
I think let us take it one at a time so that I don't get lost. But that question, the answer is very ready. This was studied, and the blowing of the wind from the northern winds, taking the moist evaporation and the moist clouds further south to the green belt, that was done on modeling. So there is evidence there that evaporation actually comes because water has a cycle. You cannot make water disappear. It either goes down or goes up, and then it comes out again, or it is drilled out. It is indestructible. I mean, all material is indestructible. It can change shape, but you cannot destroy it. And I don't have empirical evidence of the influence and the fall in Ethiopia. Somebody told me about the Buma Plateau, which is shared between South Sudan and Ethiopia. But I don't have empirical evidence of that. And certainly when the winds change direction from south to north, southern Kordofan and southern Darfur benefit from the moist evaporation and the moist clouds that are coming from the SUDD area. Again, that was established.
Yes, thank you, sir. And oh, wow, we have very interested people. I don't know how are we on time? It's past 10:30, but I think I have to accommodate both of them. Dr. Osman first, and Daniel then second.
Thank you very much. This is very interesting. Maybe this is my second time to be on this platform. I would like to thank both professors for giving this chance and giving such a very good talk on the issue. I have 2 points. One of them is just clarification of the 1959 agreement. I'm not trying to defend that one. It's very difficult to defend it, I know. But I would like to say one thing that to be clear for people who are in attendance now. The 1959 agreement is an agreement between only 2 countries. It's not binding to any other country. Any agreement is only binding to those who are signing it. The second thing, it is dealing with the amount of water reaching Aswan. It is not dealing with the whole amount of water in the Nile. Just as an example, or as a clarification, the water coming to Sudan at the borders coming to Sudan is 97 billion meter cube if you calculate it from Malakal, from Dame, and from Hamdai. It is about 97 billion cubic meters. and then it loses just by transmission. It loses this amount of 13% as it goes north to reach Aswan as 84 billion meter cube. If you go further, not to start from Malakal, if you go to Nemole, then the amount of water coming to Old Sudan from the border, it is about 130, and then you add to it whatever falls in the SUDD areas. So I think this needs to be seen. It is not a matter of dividing the amount of water among only the two countries. The two countries are dividing whatever is reaching them at Aswan. So this is a clarification that I would like to put it. The other thing is this study. I'm glad to hear that there is an initiative of doing this study on the Jonglei Canal. I think it's, an issue needs to be addressed very closely. But I would like to add to that, when my friend Elma said, when you are studying Jonglei Canal, you have to accommodate with you the system, the rest of the system, the White Nile system, up to Khartoum and even north. Because if you are adding water to the system, then some people will be affected. Unfortunately, this was missed during the studies on that. And I think this is very important, that the study has to include the whole system, Jabal Awliya as well, and the evaporation from there. If you introduce GERD as one of the elements in that, I think even the effect of GERD on Khartoum and the joint effect of the White Nile and the Blue Nile at Khartoum needs to be revisited. So I think the study should go very broad to include other elements of the system, so that you can be realistic. Because if it is only draining the South Sudan, that is not suitable. Just the last point I would like to mention is that for the last maybe 7 or 8 years, we have been receiving a lot of water, and during the last 3 or 4 years, especially from the White Nile. And even now, the White Nile is bringing twice, as Dr. Ahmed Adam said, this year, the White Nile is bringing twice the long-term average of the river. And at the same time, the Blue Nile is bringing more than half, more than 75%, or I mean, 1.5% of the long-term average. And Adbara River is bringing something similar to that. So there is a notion now that there is a lot of water that in the system that can be used by all, not only by Sudan and Egypt, by all, if the system is run as one system. And this is what I'm hoping for. People should instead of talking about quota and my share and your share, this is unsustainable. When the 1959 agreement was signed, the Egyptians were only 25 million. Now they are 105. I can understand that the 55.5 is, if it is enough for the 25 million, definitely is not enough for the 150. The solution is not to increase the quota for Egypt or for Sudan or for any other country. The solution is in sharing the benefits and the costs of the whole system, and think regionally about the Nile system as a whole, and try to go for economic integration. I'm very glad that yesterday our president and the president of Ethiopia, to a certain extent, agreed to sharing of economic integration among the two countries. I hope that will be a nucleus for the future for the other countries to do with that. Even I can even far-fetched thinking is about Congo River. Maybe the water cannot be transferred north, but at least the hydropower generation from there can be taken to the north and to the south as well, and even to Europe. So I would like to see this inclusive and holistic thinking about the whole thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Osman. And I just want to leave. Yes, I will give you the chance to respond. But Dr. Osman, you know, you made a very good points there. Many very good points there.
Sure.
And, regarding, you know, looking at the whole system together. But how could it be possible, Dr. Osman, if there is no framework, is no platform to talk and discuss and work out that thing? I don't want you to answer now, but I will give you a chance to make a presentation and your idea of how can we do that. What you said is the solution. How is it possible to do it? Is the CFA, you know, a path through it, the NBI? So, or you have a different idea. Dr. Osman, please think about that, and we will discuss separately. And Professor, you respond to that, and then Daniel, make it short. Everybody I think we stayed longer than expected. It shows how interesting is the topic, Professor, and thank you for this energy.
Yeah, I fully agree with Dr. Osman. This is when I alluded to the interdependencies. It is part of that. What do I have that you need, and what do you have that I need? That's the kind of cooperation we want. And then Dr. Abati also talked about the framework, the body, the vehicle for achieving that, and not only achieving that, but achieving it on equal shoulders. I mean, this is not big brother, small brother kind of thing. If I am Rwanda or Burundi, I need to have the same right. So the down type of look, and if you just look at for Team B, I always quote that example. Why did Egypt and Sudan object to for Team B? And unless that kind of understanding is resolved, we are not going to go very far. But one specific point really for all of us, what Dr. Ahmed said is correct, and as far as Sudan and Egypt are concerned on the 1959 agreement. And as I said earlier, I have the text of the objection of the government of Ethiopia on that agreement, and that they have nothing to do with it, that they don't recognize it. And it is correct that it was just between the two countries. However, when that agreement was signed in 1959, South Sudan was part of Sudan. And now entered into force and part of international law in the 1978 Vienna Convention on the secession of states in respect of treaties. That's where the trap for South Sudan is. Because the fact that South Sudan has seceded does not mean that they are no longer bound by the 1959 agreement. Are they bound? Are they not bound? How much are they bound? Can they tell everybody to go and fly a kite? All those are legal questions, but we do have an issue there because South Sudan was part of Sudan when that agreement was signed. And I already told the government of South Sudan that they need to have a good, competent task force to investigate that component, because the Egyptians are going to go everywhere to try and get what they want. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if you want to do another event on that, by all means, let me know. We will come and listen and we'll discuss together. We are all working for the same objective.
Yeah, exactly. Professor, thank you for saying that, because it was in my mind, and we need you to come here and, as often as you could. Daniel?
Oh, thank you, Dr. Abad, for letting me speak.
Oh, sorry, you are muted.
Okay.
Oh, something is happening. Okay, sorry. Daniel.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. My apologies for being a reason to overrun your program. the point I was trying to make was somehow related to what Dr. Osman said. And I think Professor Elkhazin alluded the problem in Jonglei, the Jonglei Canal is an extension of the 1959 agreement. From what I read a little bit about this Jonglei Canal, the part of the water for the Jonglei Canal comes from the White Nile in Victoria, Lake Victoria. When I heard about this Jonglei Canal controversy, it is a controversy between South Sudan and Egypt. So my question is, since this is a transboundary river, which is a White Nile coming to this wetland, wouldn't Uganda should be interested in knowing about this project? Would they not be interested? Shouldn't they be interested? And also about Ethiopia, what Ethiopia's interest should be in this? And I heard from the Ethiopian side that Ethiopia is also interested how this is going to be resolved. So I want to Professor Elkhazin to give an insight in how other countries, within the idea that Dr. Osman shared, that there has to be a basin-wide approach to address these issues, how other countries like Ethiopia and Uganda should see this controversy.
Professor,
the dredging. I'm talking about the dredging of the wetland.
Yeah.
So that's what I was trying to allude to.
Right. Well, the Jonglei Canal was not supposed to drain only water from what we call the White Nile, which is Bahr Jabal, the main course of the Nile. In one of the slides, I mentioned that Bahr al-Ghazal Basin, all those rivers are originating from South Sudan. So South Sudan is not a passage country. It is also a source country and a massive source. Sobat has over 14 billion cubic meters of water, and Bahr al-Ghazal Basin, when it comes to Lake No, which is the draining point, it has about 14, 15 billion cubic meters as well. So the SUDD lands, there are the eastern wetlands and the western wetlands. The eastern wetlands are based on partly on the main Nile or Bahr Jabal, but greatly also on the Sobat River, which is Ethiopia, South Sudan. The western wetlands are 100% South Sudan. So if we are coming to topographical ownership, where the water is coming, has got different rights than the rights of the upstream countries like Uganda. Countries like Uganda will be interested because part of the reason why there were massive floods in 2021 in South Sudan, this is claimed, I don't have empirical evidence, is that the dam in Kagera was open, that Lake Victoria, as Dr. Ahmed said, yes, it rose as it rose in 1946, 64, whatever have you. Every now and then Lake Victoria rises or it goes down. There is nothing we can do about it. But whatever affects Lake Victoria affects the dam. And if the dam gates are open, then they affect the quantity of water, the discharge that is going down the stream. So certainly, Uganda, even just in the way of cooperation, they are certainly an interested party. They are certainly a player. Ethiopia is certainly a major player because if we want to talk about both the Sobat, Adbara, the Blue Nile, Dindir, Rahad, all those are coming. It's not just the Blue Nile. There are quite considerable tributaries that are originating from Ethiopia and flowing into Sudan, into the Nile. So, and some of the estimates put the total discharge from Ethiopia at 86% of the total water in the Nile. So, yes, there is need for cooperation, but I don't like what I call the elastic terms of cooperation over what? On what basis? For the interest of who? So we have got to classify and identify that operation. And I take you to a very ugly experience that I never forget. What is called the Ndugu project by Boutros Ghali. Boutros Ghali, before he became Secretary General of the United Nations, he was the state minister for foreign affairs. You know, being a Copt, there was no way he would rise to be the minister of foreign affairs in a country that 90% Muslims. Anyway, he was a very shrewd man, and he was the second man in the ministry. And he was hopping right, left, and center with this Ndugu project. And Ndugu in Kiswahili means brotherhood. So Egypt was marketing the project that, we are all Africans, you know, we are all brothers, and let us work together. Until 1988 came. And floods drowned South Sudan and drowned Sudan. And Lake Nasser, for the first time in years, filled up to its maximum capacity of 174 billion cubic meters of water. And Boutros Ghali and Egypt dropped the Ndugu project like a hot potato. We never heard about it again. That's all they wanted. As soon as the lake was full, and this is enough for them for 5 years or 6 years, the rest can actually go and fly a kite. So it has to be equitable. It has to be with respect. It has to be consistent. It has to be continuous. It has to be issue-based. What are we talking about? Thank you.
I appreciate, and thank you very much. And I joined Dr. Aklog, you know, in applauding
You're welcome.
Professor, and really very, very important session we have. I believe all of us agree, but we are short of in time. There is a limit to that. I actually extended it more by almost 30 minutes. No, not more than 30 minutes, maybe more. So that shows that how the energy is generated by Professor's presentation. Thank you, Professor. I appreciate, and see you in our next meeting. And thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. God bless you all.
God bless you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. It was really interesting and informative. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.